Hey everybody, how's it going? Just wanted to get on here and talk tonight a little bit about Laken Snelling. Let me know if you can hear me okay. If you can, I'm gonna just start talking about her. So Laken Snelling is a Kentucky cheerleader, and she is from the University of Kentucky, like I said, and secretly delivered a baby before allegedly leaving it in a closet as she popped out to grab McDonald's, according to the police. And so I was just scrolling TikTok last night, and I saw some differing opinions about Laken Snelling and different ways to look at it, and just wanted to share that with you, since this channel is kind of all about looking at true crime with nuance and taking some unpopular opinions and stuff like that. So my dog keeps licking her paws. So you okay? Apparently, Snelling's phone had images of her during labor, photos of her doing things ordinary pregnant women should not be doing, according to newly unsealed court documents obtained by People magazine. The recovered photos of her in labor were later deleted in an attempt to hide the birth, the affidavit said, and investigators believe other images may have been successfully destroyed before her arrest. This is her. After giving birth, Snelling allegedly stuffed the baby boy in a trash bag and went to McDonald's for a bite, according to the affidavit. It was unclear exactly when or how the baby died. When she was out, Snelling's roommates, who had heard disturbing noises come from the room the night before, snuck into her bedroom and found a blood-soaked towel on the floor and a plastic bag containing the evidence of childbirth. They later found the baby cold to the touch in the closet and called 911, according to the affidavit. Snelling initially told the cops that the baby fell on the floor and after she gave birth, but didn't think he was alive or breathing or alive, according to the affidavit. Snelling allegedly told cops, believing the baby to be dead, she wrapped the baby up like a burrito and laid next to him on the floor because it gave her a little comfort in the moment. According to the affidavit, she woke up around 7:30 a.m. and placed the baby in the trash bag, and then showered and cleaned up the blood in the placenta and put it in a Ziploc bag before skipping her morning class and a visit to the school clinic for McDonald's. She later admitted to medical staff that the newborn had shown a little bit of fetal movement and made a whimper after he was born, to the court documents state. Roxanne. The photos were taken while she was in labor were deleted in an attempt to hide the birth, the affidavit said, and investigators believe there could be additional images that were also removed from her phone before the arrest. Roxanne. Come. So basically, I just wanted to get on here, share some TikToks that I saw that really got me thinking of this in a different light. So my initial reaction to this was, oh my God, I can't believe she did that to her baby. But after doing some deeper thinking about it, I just wanted to share what I saw with you and see what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comments. So, let's see here. So this is where it started.
Has not been charged with homicide. She has not been charged with manslaughter. She was charged with abuse of a corpse, which should raise so many red flags for you. In Ohio in 2023, Brittany Watts was 22 weeks pregnant, went to the hospital presenting signs of miscarriage, and begged to be induced. The doctors took so long debating over whether or not they could provide Brittany with this care, whether or not she met the standard for them to help her, that she got fed up and went home and miscarried there. She miscarried into her toilet because where else are you going to do it in your house? And she tried to flush, but it was too large. She then returned to the hospital and told the staff exactly what happened, where a nurse then called the police and reported Brittany for giving herself an induction and then trying to flush a live baby down the toilet. Brittany was arrested and charged with abuse of a corpse. The charges were dropped, but not before there were dozens of headlines calling her a baby unaliver. It's worth noting it was a wanted pregnancy, but she was also likely profiled because she was a single Black woman. Selena Marie Chandler Scott was arrested this year and charged with abuse of a corpse. She was arrested in the hospital where she woke up after passing out from blood loss during a miscarriage. She was found unconscious by EMTs that her neighbors called. Again, the charges were dropped because they had no standing, but Selena is permanently traumatized and slandered. Look, the uber conservatives and pro-lifers are aware of the fact that most people can learn the facts and agree that abortion is not red rum. So they thrive on misinformation and twisting words and pre-existing stigma against women. And they will continue to tweak it until they reach the largest audience possible. I have seen pro-choice people calling Laken Snelling a monster. I am metaphorically hitting you with the spray bottle. Bad! Laken Snelling has not been charged.
So that's kind of what first got me thinking, maybe I am looking at this wrong. Maybe this isn't all it's cracked up to be, and I shouldn't be judging her so harshly because I had a baby at 15 and luckily it came out fine and everything was fine, but who knows what or how I would have reacted if it didn't. So I just wanted to share some more of these and let me know your thoughts.
Hey, so if you feel the need to attack a very young woman because she very likely had a stillbirth or miscarriage and you need to call her a baby murderer, call me a baby murderer. Yeah. Because I actually had an abortion. At 16 weeks. I was already a mom. I was married. This is my early 30s. Yeah. He had Down syndrome, and because of his Down syndrome, he had a lot of other issues, and he was going to be really sick. And so I paid a lot of money and left my state and had an abortion. So if you must crawl out of your little troll hole and spew vitriol and hate at somebody because your life.
Who cares? Who cares? Why are we up in people's business about this? And I'm not just directing this at this commenter, because I've seen a lot of comments like this, but people need to get out of this cop mindset. It is a cop, snitch, weirdo, fucking next door, bizarro mindset that I really, really hate to see, and I really hate to see women doing it to other women.
I agree with this wholeheartedly because, you know, what do you do with your miscarriage? You know, and especially if your mom doesn't know about it, you know, your friends don't know about it, what do you do with it? And it's not been said that it was, you know, like a full-term baby yet. It's not been officially said. It has been unofficially said that it was full term, but officially it has not been said that it was. And I just think what people do with their miscarriage is their own business.
Does not matter. The why doesn't matter. It doesn't matter why someone chooses to flush their miscarriage versus take the miscarriage remains and throw them in the trash. It doesn't matter why someone who maybe is later in their pregnancy would decide to bury the fetal remains and say a few words, right? That is a person's own personal decision about their own personal pregnancy outcome, and it's none of our business. And just because we might find something distasteful, just because we might find it icky or wrong, or we don't like that, just because we don't like something doesn't mean that the cops should be involved. It doesn't mean that there should be a law against that thing. And by the way, there are no laws against that. There are no laws against disposing of a miscarriage in a proper or improper way, nor should there be. And once you start buying into that idea, you are handing conservatives over such an incredible amount of power. 1 in 4 American women will have a miscarriage in her life. Do you think they should all call the cops? We should all call the cops whenever we have a miscarriage? Oh, well, like she was later in her pregnancy. How late? At what point should the cops be called when someone has a miscarriage? We need to get out of this cop mindset.
I think that's such a good point too, because like, yeah, when is the point of you should call the cops, or you know, like what you should do with it? I mean, people take pictures of their stillborns and, you know, and their babies that they have like that all the time, and you know, it's none of our business. So I thought that was just another great point.
I want to talk about the Laken Snelling case. Disclaimer, I know a lot of my audience are pregnant folks. If this is not something that you want to see talked about, please just scroll on. So obviously I agree with all the people who are saying we don't know how early on this was. She was probably trying to like hide evidence from the law because of all of the pushback from miscarriages, the way that they're going to investigate her, even if there was literally nothing she could have done. And I completely agree with that. But what I want to respond to are the people who are saying it doesn't matter what happened because there's a huge moral issue with her putting a baby in a trash bag. If that is your train of thought, I really want to give you some context because I think most of us who work in and around birth, babies, and stillbirth can read that and go, oh, I see what happened. I'm not saying this is 100% what happened, but I'm saying this is kind of like where my brain goes to quickest, or where I'm kind of like, oh, this is obviously what happened if we don't have any other information. If this was a later on loss, okay, let's say 20, 22, 24, 30, 35 weeks. My guess is that she didn't put that baby in a trash bag because she didn't care about it, but instead because she did. I don't think it's crazy for someone to give birth and then know that this fetus is not going to survive and be terrified that no matter who they call, this baby is going to be taken away from them. It's actually not uncommon. A lot of parents who have stillbirths really, really want to spend a lot of time with their baby as much as they can. And when this happens in a hospital setting, right, you have kind of all of this stuff around it that helps you process and kind of like forces you to make decisions that you might otherwise not be able to make. They have cooling cots to slow tissue breakdown, and at a certain point they will ask you to give your baby up to go to the morgue. But if this happens on accident at home, she's just been through an incredibly traumatic event. My immediate assumption upon hearing this case was, oh, she wanted to keep the baby with her. And then all the people saying, well, it's a trash bag. It's a plastic bag. That is the kind of obvious choice if you're going to keep human remains somewhere. You cannot just wrap a baby who has passed away in a blanket and leave them there. just in a blanket. You need some kind of plastic around them. And I know that it's horrible and distressing to imagine, but I think we have completely lost the plot if we are assuming that she did something malicious instead of jumping to she is a person who gave birth, was incredibly traumatized, and did what she felt she had to do in the moment. You can say that you would never ever put your baby in a trash bag, but if it was that or getting your baby taken away, you might. I want to talk about the
I thought that was so real and just like astute too, because it's true. I have had miscarriages, and I can see how a mother would want to hold on to that as long as possible. I mean, yeah, I'm sure other women know what I'm talking about. Keep going.
That infant in a closet in Kentucky, University of Kentucky, could have very well been an underdeveloped fetus in an early gestational age for all we know. We need to remember that we are in a dictatorship run on propaganda. Taking women's rights away feels like daily. So we also need to be able to have adult conversations without projection and based on logic and fact. I do not care to be attacked for presenting this very possible medical hypothetical situation, what is probably truly what is going on. So and let's say it is a whole infant in that closet. What do you think is going to happen if you prosecute women who don't have health care or proper health care and going to prison for having a miscarriage? That infant in a closet in Kentucky, University of Kentucky, could have very well been an underdeveloped.
Yeah, people tend to make odd decisions when they're in acute shock from physical and mental trauma.
The comment she's replying to, if in case you're just listening, is miscarriage or not, she wrapped it and hid it in her closet.
Like a miscarriage or delivering a stillborn. By the way, in Kentucky, it is illegal to flush your Cheerio-sized embryo down the toilet. They call that a baby. You are required to use proper avenues to dispose of the remains. I live in California. My doctor recommended that I flushed my 7-week miscarriage. If I had done that in Kentucky, I would be arrested and charged with the exact same thing as Laken. Do you think that I deserve prison? By the way, you're commenting under a video where I told the story of another woman in a state with abortion bans who did go to the hospital and tell them that she just had a miscarriage at home. The same hospital that had turned her away days earlier. So she did try to have the miscarriage at the hospital, but instead she had it into her toilet. And because of that, they called the police on her and she was arrested for, guess what? The same thing Laken was. In Texas last year, an 18-year-old dropped off her stillborn at a safe haven box. And that's supposed to be anonymous. However, there's a stipulation if the infant is harmed or not alive, the anonymity part goes away. So they tracked her down and arrested her. I saw another woman on here sharing her story that she had miscarried a very, very, very wanted pregnancy of twins. And she miscarried into the toilet like most of us do. And she panicked because that was too big, and so she had to scoop the remains out and ended up putting them in a plastic bag ultimately and taking them to her doctor's office. Do you think she deserves prison? Because honestly, in Kentucky, I can definitely see if you walk in with the remains in a plastic bag, they could just as easily call that abuse of a corpse and arrest you. Even though, ironically enough, at the hospital, something like that would end up being put in a biohazard medical waste bag, basically a trash bag. You're acknowledging that it could have been a natural miscarriage, and yet you're still asserting that she deserves to be arrested because she didn't do the right thing with the remains while in shock. And a surveillance state that is already well documented criminalizing women for natural pregnancy loss outcomes.
I just think it's wild. Just wild. And this next TikTok is going to go into like the cops and like what the word infant versus
What was the
fetus.
literal first thing I said when this case came out? When we found out about Laken Snelling, the Kentucky college student who's been charged with abuse of a corpse because police say they found an infant in her closet, I begged people, I begged journalists, I begged people on social media, please stop using the word baby. Please stop using the word infant. We don't know that that's true. We only know what police are telling us, and police will often, especially in anti-abortion states, they will use terms like infant and baby when they find miscarriage remains. And now here we are. We have a huge scoop at the newsletter. It's from Kylie Chung, our new reporter, who's a superstar. She spoke to the coroner investigating the case and found out that they do know whether or not this young woman was full term. They do know the exact gestation of her pregnancy, but they've decided not to share that information. Not yet, maybe not ever, who knows. But most incredibly, they told Kylie, the coroner told Kylie, when we use the word infant, that could mean fetus. Could mean fetus, could mean a baby, you know, it's a broad term. I don't know how many different ways I can explain to people that you cannot trust cops, especially not on a case like this, especially not in post-Roe America, especially not in an anti-abortion state. It is obscene. This young woman has had her name smeared. Her picture is all over the internet. True crime TikTok has glommed onto the story saying awful things. I've read thousands of comments saying the most disgusting things about this young woman. And I want to be clear, it doesn't matter how far along she was, even if she was full term, even if she had a stillbirth, this is a person who deserved to be treated with compassion and care and medical treatment and not criminalization. But we don't know what happened in this case. We only know what police said. And people are uncritically parroting police in an anti-abortion state in post-Roe America, and it is disgusting. What was the...
Yeah, so it could have not even been, this TikTok's also kind of going down this
Did this young cheerleader murder a baby, or did she have a stillbirth? I'm a forensic scientist and a former CSI, and this is Laken Snelling, who over the weekend was arrested and charged after police found the remains of an infant in a closet in her home. It's important to understand at this point that the word infant is coming from the police and the police reporting, not from a medical source. One question that the prosecutors and police in this case are going to have to answer fairly quickly is if Laken delivered a baby which she then killed, for which there would be a charge of homicide, or if she delivered a stillborn fetus. And actually, discriminating between those two scenarios is not a clear-cut process. It's not an easy thing to do. Right now, Laken is being charged with a couple of things, including concealing the birth of an infant. And you can see here in the citation where police say that they found a deceased infant. They don't use the term fetus. But what does that actually mean? When we say infant, what we are referring to is a baby who is born. And legally speaking, it's important to understand if this child was born alive and then died through either an accident, some sort of natural cause, or homicide, or if the child was stillborn. And there is actually quite a bit of literature about trying to discriminate between those two cases. Now, in the past, physicians used to use something called a lung float test, which is generally regarded now as pseudoscience. And basically what they would do is remove the lungs of the deceased infant or fetus and literally put them in a bucket of water and see if they would float or not. The idea being if they floated, they had air in them, which would indicate that the baby was breathing, because obviously a baby does not breathe air in utero. The problem is that some stillborn infants, some stillborn fetuses, had air in their lungs and in their GI tract, either because of decompositional changes or because of artificial respirations like those given during CPR. So this is not really a good way to try to determine if an infant was born alive or not. Although police are using the term infant, we don't actually know the gestational age of this child, and that's something that the medical examiner is going to have to account for during the autopsy. And of course, if the mother in this case, Laken Snelling, if she was being treated by an OBGYN, they would have to subpoena those medical records and get access to those to try to figure out what was going on. Obviously, her OB would know, hey, she's 4 months along, she's 6 months along, but if she wasn't under the treatment of an OB-GYN, then it's gonna really rely on the medical examiner to come up with that finding. This is gonna have to do with the size of the fetus, the weight of the fetus, and the gestational age as it presents to the medical examiner. And you can see here, this is from an Australian piece of literature, and in Australia they're saying they discriminate between stillbirth and miscarriage based on the gestational age and the weight of the child. The other thing that this report points out is that there are some valid ways to determine if a child was born or stillborn. And one way is to look for the presence of maceration, which is something that happens in utero when a fetus has passed away. It's not like a normal decomposition change that happens to something that dies and decomposes outside of the mother. Maceration is a pretty unique process that happens inside the body, and it looks and presents differently. Other things that the medical examiner is going to be looking for would be signs of food in the baby's stomach and GI tract, signs of healing to their umbilical.
So that's just some of the things that we're going to find out whenever the autopsy comes out on this baby. I feel like whenever, you know, I don't know if any guys are watching, but whenever you have a miscarriage, it's very, very painful. And if she was in denial about being pregnant and hadn't told anybody or told many people, and she started feeling that immense pain, you know, she probably just wanted, and she didn't really want the pregnancy to begin with. I can just imagine you would just want to go home and just miscarry and then just pretend it never happened. I mean, I can see that happening in somebody's mind, especially a 21-year-old girl. But we're going to keep going.
Okay, so tell me what the right way is. What's the right...
This is talking about the right way to dispose of a fetus. And like, even whenever I was talking to my boyfriend about this, you know, earlier today, he was like, well, isn't there something you should do with it? Like, what are you supposed to do with it? You know, it's like, what are you supposed to do? You know, when you're a woman, you're not born with this knowledge of where to dispose of a miscarriage.
Way to dispose of a fetus after a miscarriage. And are you prepared to send someone to jail for not doing it the right way? Because that's the conversation that we're having right now, and that's what's happening right now. And I've got to tell you, whatever like proper way you can think of to dispose of a miscarriage, I have seen someone arrested for it. We have seen people arrested for flushing their miscarriages. We have seen people arrested for burying their miscarriages. We have seen people arrested who go to the hospital for their miscarriages. So please spare me this idea that if women just behaved a certain way, if we did certain things, that we wouldn't be arrested, that we wouldn't be punished for our pregnancy outcomes. It's just not true. And I really want people to think about what you mean when you say that there's a right and a wrong way to dispose of fetal remains. Because once you get law enforcement involved, once you make this the purview of the government, what you're talking about is 1 in 4 American women, because that's how many have miscarriages. What you're talking about is 1 in 4 American women having to report their miscarriages to the police. What you're talking about is every negative pregnancy outcome becoming automatically suspect and investigated. And I have to tell you, that is what conservatives want. That is what they're working towards and moving towards. And so when you leave comments like this, when you drag a girl who you do not know and where you don't know the full circumstances of what happened, when you do this, you are contributing to a culture that makes it that much easier for Republicans to pass insane fucking laws. Okay, so tell me what...
Try not to make this political, but I do believe in a woman's right to choose.
You guys remember about 11 months ago, right before the election, I sat here and told you guys the story about how I had a twin miscarriage that I desperately wanted, and then I had to get a medical abortion because they weren't coming out, and then I had to scoop pregnancies out of the toilet because they were the size of a baseball and I didn't think they were going to flush, and I ultimately had to put them in a trash bag. Do you guys think I should be in jail? Am I a criminal? Am I a murderer? Because that's what you are acting like Laken Snelling is. That is fucking sick. You women are getting on here and calling her a murderer, dragging her, showing pictures of her from months ago and trying to guess if she looked pregnant or not. Literally judging her body month by month to see if you think she knew she was fucking pregnant. I'm sorry, but if the fucking state of Kentucky knew it was a full-term baby, they would have said that by now. They would have said it's a full-term fucking baby and she killed it. That is not what happened. She had a miscarriage, she had a stillbirth, and she was afraid because she lives in the fucking state of Kentucky where you can't get proper fucking medical care as a woman. That's why. So stop dragging this fucking woman who has just gone through the worst tragedy of her fucking life. You don't know what happened. You guys remember about 11 months ago, right before the election, I sat...
thought that was pretty fitting. I mean, because you don't know what happened, and I guess the reports in the comments, people were saying,
You guys remember about 11 months
her baby was full term. I never saw that on any of the reports. And what is full term? 30 weeks, 32 weeks? I mean, I don't know. She said she heard a whimper, but I think that also could have been in her mind, to be honest.
I think there's more to this story. It's hard to imagine anything more horrific than discarding a newborn baby in a literal trash bag, stuffing it in a closet. Harder to imagine any scenario in which discarding your baby like trash could be excusable or justifiable. That being said, my gut tells me there is more to this story. I don't think it's as simple as Laken Snelling, the 21-year-old University of Kentucky student and member of the University of Kentucky stunt team, charged with basically discarding her baby like trash. I don't think it's as simple as Laken Snelling didn't want her baby or didn't want people to know that she had been pregnant. Laken posted these pictures on her public TikTok in June. If she was really in denial about her pregnancy or trying to hide her pregnancy, why would she publicly post pictures that clearly look like a maternity shoot? She also posted this in June. Her goals: wedding ring, baby, family, house. It just doesn't make sense to me that a girl who didn't want her baby or a girl who was hiding her pregnancy in shame would be making these kinds of public posts on social media. I also find it interesting that Laken has posted bond. She's out of jail. Yet as of the making of this video, her social media profiles are still public. Wouldn't that be the first thing you shut down in this situation when you got out of jail? Before you even washed your hind end or got a draw off a cigarette, a hit off a vape, or whatever it is you've been fiending to do since you've been locked up, wouldn't you shut down your social media first and foremost?
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
Delete your accounts or at least make them private? I just think there has to be a whole lot more to this story than what is being publicly reported right now. The story ain't adding up. We are definitely missing some pretty big pieces to this puzzle.
Yeah.
I have no idea what those pieces may be, but something ain't right, or something ain't being reported. What is being reported, I just saw from a local news station, is that Laken has been released on a $100,000 cash bond plus home incarceration, however, no ankle monitor, and I believe she's been ordered to stay at her parents' home. Criminal defense attorney of a decade, I don't ever recall having a client placed on home incarceration without an ankle monitor. In this case, though, it may be because her parents live in Tennessee and they can't hook her up on an ankle monitor in Tennessee that reports to Kentucky courts. I also question whether that $100,000 cash bond was really a $100,000 full cash bond. A $100,000 full cash bond, Laken's only been charged with Class D felonies at this point. Those are the lowest level felonies in Kentucky. Assuming she has no prior criminal history, which I don't think she does, you don't see $100,000 full cash bonds on Class D felonies. A lot of times the news organizations don't understand this and they misreport this. My suspicion is it's a $100,000 cash bond secured by 10%, meaning her parents, for instance, could pay $10,000 and get her out of jail. The medical examiner is performing an autopsy. The medical examiner's findings will be reported publicly. Shouldn't have to wait a whole lot longer for that. That should be enlightening. However, ultimately, I think we're going to have to hear Laken's side of this story, and something tells me that Laken's going to have a story to tell.
I think so too. This is the TikTok that really kind of got me down that rabbit hole. And then this one I thought was super interesting too, because this girl is from Kentucky and she said she was trying to find an OBGYN. And go ahead and follow all these people if if you're interested in their content.
Thing about the girl who put her baby in her closet with a trash bag is, it might sound insane, but the way I'm thinking of it, because I just had a miscarriage last month and I live in Kentucky, she might not have even had an OBGYN. Like, should she have went to the hospital? Should she have taken the baby to the hospital? Absolutely. But look, I had a miscarriage last month. When I was pregnant still, I called OBGYNs. We don't have any appointments till May of 2026. Let me clarify, I'm pregnant right now. we don't have any appointments till May of 2026. I live in a large city in Kentucky. We have 2 major hospital systems here, which means that there's at least 20 different OBGYNs per office at both hospital systems. There's private, women health specialists. Nobody had appointments. The earliest appointment I could find was May of 2026. If I was pregnant last month, y'all do the math. When would that baby have been due? April. How are you going to even consider telling somebody on the phone May of 2026? So I want y'all to understand how bad healthcare is in the South, and maybe, just maybe, have a little tiny bit of understanding of what that girl might have been going through in college, might I add, with an underdeveloped brain, might I add. Should she have went to the hospital? Yes. But like I said, I miscarried last month. I went to the hospital. The emergency room would not confirm that it was a miscarriage. Wouldn't confirm that the picture I showed them in the toilet was baby. Would not confirm. Made me kept referring me back to following up with an OBGYN that I do not have. Gave me a referral to a doctor. Call the doctor the day after I get out the emergency room. Hey, I have a referral from you. Sorry, we don't have any appointments until November of 2026. So I just want to clue maybe some of the other parts of the nation into how bad healthcare is in the South and how hard it is to even receive healthcare. I have insurance that can get taken anywhere. It doesn't matter where I go. Could I have, yes, went out my way to find a doctor and do all this, blah, 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 blah? Yes, I'm sure I could have. I'm sure I could have went, I don't even know, 2 towns over. There's a lot of solutions to this problem, yes, but there's also things that make you think, like, why is that even a thing? Why is it that I can't get a doctor's appointment until almost a year after I call? So that makes me wonder, did she have an OBGYN? Did she have a doctor this whole time? People, want to say, oh, you should be going to the doctor. You should be going to the doctor when you're pregnant. But if they don't have any doctor's appointments and they don't care, what are you supposed to do? So,
yeah, I think that's kind of funny too.
If the case of Laken Snelling sounds familiar, it might be because of the case of this girl, Skylar Richardson, a cheerleader who in 2017 was accused of murdering her baby and burying her in the backyard. I'm a forensic scientist and a former CSI, so let me talk about this case that happened just a couple
I really like this girl. I follow her. I think she shares a lot of
years ago.
Really interesting perspectives from the medical side.
Recently, I made a video about a University of Kentucky cheerleader by the name of Laken Snelling who was arrested over the weekend after an infant was allegedly found dead in her closet, and that girl, a cheerleader in Kentucky, basically admitted to having this baby. Whether it was stillborn or killed after death is unclear. The charges seem to suggest that the baby was stillborn. I got this comment on that video saying that case reminded them of Skylar Brooke Richardson, this girl, also a young blonde cheerleader who gave birth to a baby that she claimed was stillborn, and then in her youth what she decided to do was bury the baby in her backyard. At first she said that the baby was stillborn. Then she was interviewed again by police, and then she said that she heard the baby make a gurgle sound, which would indicate that the baby was alive. And for some reason, she indicated that she had attempted to cremate the baby and set the baby on fire, which a forensic anthropologist said happened, and reported that there was evidence of burning on the baby, and the girl was charged accordingly. And then that same forensic anthropologist recounted that testimony and said no, there was no evidence that the baby was ever burned, but the state never changed their charges, never changed their case, and continued to insist that she attempted to cremate the baby based on what she had said in her interview. One of the interesting things about Skylar Richardson's case is that nobody really knew that she was pregnant except for Skylar, who found out at the OB's office when she was like 8.5 months pregnant. She was very small. Here she is in February trying on her prom dress. Here she is in May, 2 days before she delivered her baby, in that same prom dress. She's very small. I mean, even at the beach in a bikini, she is very small, and her parents had known that she was struggling with an eating disorder, so they remember saying that they were quite pleased that it looked like she had put some weight on. They didn't really understand that she put weight on because she was pregnant. Now, for contrast, here are the pictures of Laken Snelling. These were taken back in June, and you can see what she looks like at this point, how pregnant she does or does not appear to be just 2 months ago. Now, in Skylar's case, she was interviewed by police without her parents, and ultimately this tactic that the police played on her, this we're on your side sympathetic tactic that they played, worked, and she talked and she said a lot of stuff in this interview. She did not have a parent or attorney present with her, but when she went to trial, there was some question about whether this baby was ever alive, which I mentioned is going to be an issue in the Laken Snelling case. And you can see here, this is testimony from her homicide trial, and they're questioning Dr. Susan Brown, the medical examiner, who is saying that this baby died from homicidal violence of an undetermined way. So undetermined cause, but homicidal manner. But when she was cross-examined, that same doctor admitted that there was no evidence that the baby was ever even born alive. Here you can see that she says, based on the autopsy examination, she cannot determine whether it was a live birth. She's making the determination that the child was born alive based on other evidence, including apparently testimonial evidence from the defendant herself in the form of her interview. Ultimately, Skylar went to a jury trial and she was acquitted of most of the charges filed against her, including homicide. She was convicted of improper burial of a corpse or mistreatment of a corpse, and she was sentenced to 3 years probation. Very, very similar case. I suspect we're going to see a very, very similar defense out of this most recent case from Kentucky, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, comparing her to Skylar Richardson.
Okay, let's talk about how misinformation operates when it comes to cases like this where women are arrested for their pregnancy outcomes. And I'm not, picking on this commenter specifically because I've seen this version of events in multiple comments and multiple videos. It is not based in evidence. It's just internet rumor. And so let's talk about the way that misinformation flows, like timelines, how it operates, and the damage that it does. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. In Nebraska in 2023, a teenage girl was arrested for self-managing her abortion and burying the fetus in the backyard. They arrested her for abuse of a corpse, which is what we see in a lot of these cases because they can't arrest people for abortions, but they're desperate to arrest them, so they arrest them for abuse of a corpse, right? In the media coverage of this case, one line kept getting repeated again and again and again. And it was that when police went to go check her Facebook messages, and this was one of the ways they were able to arrest her, was by checking her Facebook messages, that in her Facebook messages, she said, "I can't wait to get this thing out of my body." It was repeated in every single bit of news about this case, right? It was like in local media.
I just wanted to say, whenever I was miscarrying, I said that same thing.
The Associated Press put it in their coverage. "I can't wait to get this thing out of my body." So when I was reporting on the case, I went to the actual Facebook messages that the police had subpoenaed, and I read through them. There was not a line like that, a line similar to that in one single place. There was nothing of the sort. She said nothing like that.
Because at the time I was miscarrying, I had already knew the baby had died, so that's why I said that. But you can't judge people.
So how did that happen? How did this, fabricated line get attributed to this teenage girl? It turns out that this was something a police officer said, that a police officer was describing the girl's Facebook messages and said, "Oh yeah, the girl, basically said that she couldn't wait to get the thing out of her body." And all of a sudden, a police officer's interpretation of a teenage girl's Facebook messages became attributed to her as a direct quote. I'll give you another example. Brittany Watts in Ohio. She was arrested for abuse of a corpse. Again, there's that charge. She flushed her miscarriage, right? As one does. Police were so desperate to find something to charge her with that they went to her house and they tore her bathroom apart. They took apart her toilet looking for fetal remains so that they could charge her. So what does that turn into in local media? That turns into headlines and news coverage that says a woman tried to flush her newborn baby and it was so big that it clogged the toilet and police had to go there and take the toilet apart in order to find the baby. That's how misinformation operates. And this is why you can't trust what cops say. This is why you can't trust what you hear on the internet. You need to go directly to the sources. You need actual evidence. You're talking about people's lives, people's, faces and names being splashed across crime pages for miscarriages, for pregnancy outcomes, for stillbirths. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, so this is it's just crazy. And I just wanted to share like a little bit of the not popular opinion, I guess, about maybe it's not all what you think.
Imagine you are 21 years old. Everything is going for you. You're a cheerleader, you're in school, you have big plans for your life. Sudden, you find out you're pregnant. Do you terminate it? No, you decide not to. And maybe, even though it will derail the course of your life, over the next couple months, you start to accept the new reality that your life might be, even if it's coupled with fear. Imagine you are 21 years old. Everything is going for you. Imagine you are
Sorry.
21.
Where were we?
I wasn't going to speak on this, but I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Maybe if you don't want people putting babies or unburned fetuses in plastic bags in their closets, don't criminalize miscarriages. Maybe if you don't want people disposing of fetal remains in a way that you deem disrespectful, maybe give them a right to health care or literally any other option. That girl was in college. She was, in my opinion, likely conservative. She did not have anywhere to go. She possibly was in the throes of experiencing a miscarriage and didn't know what to do and was just trying to wait until a moment to figure it out. And I know I'm going to get hate on this, and I know weird people are going to find this and come in my comments. I don't care. This is happening all over the US, and it's going to happen more. It's going to be everywhere. That girl's not a monster. She's doing what she had to do.
So yeah, basically in summation, I just wanted to share that because it's like I immediately went into it thinking one way, and then that just changed my mind about it, having been through the experiences that I have. So just wanted to share that unpopular opinion. Feel free, like and subscribe, leave a comment, let me know that you were here on the replay crew. There's not a lot of people watching live, so let me know. Yeah, so I hope you like my